What's up, gang? What's up, squad? Welcome. We gonna do this first. What's today? Wednesday. We gonna do a spooky, scary Sunday on Wednesday. And I got this from Corey Kenshin, so I had to do it. All right, y'all. Let's get it.
Collect any of my things, I ran out to the car. I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove away from the village as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I got back to the city. When I got back to my apartment, I turned on the radio and heard a news report. The announcer said that, in the village, the dead bodies of 2 girls had been discovered. Their corpses had been mutilated and dumped in a swamp. I guess the creature found what it was looking for. I don't want to, but I am curious to know. What would have happened if I didn't make the right decision of sprinting?
Years ago, when I was in the 5th grade, my friends and I were walking home from school when we noticed some of the other kids laughing very loudly at something and running away like they were disgusted. We looked back, and they were laughing at this woman who was walking behind us. We didn't know why because we saw her every day when we were walking home from school. We just never spoke with her, or we never even seen her up close. We moved closer to see what was so funny, and we definitely noticed what the other kids were making ruckus about. This was a man dressed in a miniskirt with high heels on. The other kids were throwing sticks and rocks at it, but he never responded. He just smiled while he was walking. A few days later, I just so happened to be watching the news, and I saw the same guy's face on the news. My friend who lives around the corner was getting her mail when she saw the man across the street watching her. He waved and he started skipping across the street like a little girl while loudly asking her, "Do you remember me?" She was one of the kids that threw rocks at him. She shut her door as he started running full speed toward her house while wearing a wig, miniskirt, heels, and a woman's tank top. He started banging on her door until she called the police. He was caught within minutes. Anything could have happened to us that day, with this guy roaming our neighborhood. But luckily, nothing ever happened to any of the kids that I knew.
This
That was
story
short.
happened when I was 18 years old and a senior in high school. It was an ordinary night. My dad worked the night shift, so we all decided to sleep in my parents' room. I was with my younger brother, who was 15 years old at the time, my younger sister, who was 11 years old, and my mom. My parents' room was a small, purple, square-shaped room, which also had a bathroom. The bathroom's door was across from the bed. My younger brother and I slept on my parents' bed, while my mom and my younger sister slept on the floor. Before sleeping, we all had a short conversation, and after that, we went to sleep at 9 p.m. At 2 a.m., I was awakened by a strange sensation. As I opened my eyes, I had my eyes fixed on the bathroom door, which was cracked open. To my surprise, I noticed a black figure, which looked exactly like my younger brother. The figure stood there with his arms crossed, watching me. However, his eyes were shut. At that moment, I froze. I couldn't move from the bed, and I was scared that if he opened his eyes, he would have red or bloodshot eyes. I decided to quietly turn my head to the other side of the bed to see if it was indeed my brother. My heart sunk to my stomach when I realized that my brother was sleeping right next to me. So many thoughts kept racing through my head. Who is this person? Why is he here? How could he look exactly like my brother? I tried as hard as possible to sleep and ignore what I saw. A few minutes later, after opening and closing my eyes, I was shocked to see that the figure was now standing above me, still looking right into my eyes with his eyes shut. My eyes were wide open from the shock. I felt like I was going to die from a heart attack. I felt as if he was starting to open his eyes, which scared me and caused me to close my eyes and force myself to sleep. Forcing myself to sleep worked, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. When I woke up, I headed to the living room and saw my mom. After holding it inside for a bit, I gave up and told my mom about the incident. I almost froze when she said she saw the same exact figure and witnessed what happened. It was terrifying. We both saw the same black figure that looked exactly exactly like my brother. It was as if he was my brother's twin. We lived in that house for 2 more years until we finally moved out. After the move, we told my dad about this story because he doesn't like hearing creepy stories, so we kept it a secret until we moved. He surprised us by saying that we were not alone. He saw some strange things in that house as well. When you think of Counter-Strike Global Offensive, the last thing you'd think of was a horror story. But yet, here I am. It was the summer of 2014 and I was bored and home alone, so naturally I hopped on CSGO. I went to Dust Online to play some casual. It wasn't a very busy lobby, there was about 5 people on each side. I joined Terrace, where I quickly discovered the only other person with a mic was a guy whose name was something like Smarties McFlurry. He sounded a lot older than me, I was 14 at the time. His name was Dave and we got along well and we played good together since we had the same number of skill. We eventually played more CSGO together and then friended each other on Steam. After that, he asked for some of my social media and I gave him my Discord and Snapchat. Then on CSGO, Dave suddenly said he had to leave and we could play more tomorrow. So I got off and watched some TV and eventually went to sleep on the couch. I was home alone for the night. At like 1 a.m., I awoke and got a glass of water. Then I heard a Snapchat notification from my phone. Curious as to who was sending snaps at this time of night, I picked it up and saw it was from Dave. I opened it, and it was a picture of my front lawn and house. The phone and the glass of water fell from my hands to the floor, and my heart began to race. I was suddenly frozen, as if rooted to the spot. The darkness around me seemed to become thicker, and I swear I was seeing shadows all around me. Then I heard a knock at the glass. I turned to the back. Window, and there he was, the Dave guy, who looked a lot older and creepier than me. Without thinking, I ran to the back door and locked it. I also locked the front door. I could hear him calling to me through the window. Then I proceeded to run to the only windowless room, the bathroom. I stayed in there for about an hour, shaking and fearing the worst. I dreaded hearing the sound of Dave calling me again, a knock at the door, or even footsteps outside. I don't know how long it was before I fell asleep. The next morning, my parents arrived home, and I hesitated to tell them about my experience. I knew they would drop shit on me, but it wasn't just that. I was questioning whether or not I was dreaming when the Dave guy appeared at my house. I knew I had not been dreaming playing CSGO with him, though. However, when I checked my phone, it was like he didn't exist. He was not on my friends list in CSGO, his Steam account was gone, his Discord was gone, and even his Snapchat was gone. All deleted. To this day, I still question my sanity about whether or not this Dave guy who I played CSGO with really existed. I know for sure we had chatted on the game, on Discord and on Snapchat, but had he really come to my house? And why were all of his online accounts deleted? I really don't know. I was in my friend's birthday party. It was 11 p.m. After the party, I drove my friend to their house, 2 hours away, drive from the party.
His mic is horrible.
When we went to their village, it's a pretty big village, and most of the owner is rich. While I was driving, there is a street there, kind of 500 meters long, and it's very dark and creepy. The car I was driving is a Toyota Revo. It has 11 seating capacity, and we are just 3 inside the car. I passed that creepy street, I'm kind of scared because it's dark and a lot of trees that full of leaves and brushes. There's no street light. It's just my car headlights that give light on the road. After we pass that street and I'm dropped them on their house and I'm just alone to go back to my home. But I was scared because there's no alternate route. I really need to pass that creepy street in their village. I have no choice but to be brave. So, when I'm about to pass that street, it's really dark, but I have no choice but to pass that creepy street. While I was driving on that creepy street, about in the middle of it, suddenly, I felt cold, but my aircon temperature was not that cold, and suddenly, my back of the neck starts to feel cold. When I look in my rear mirror view, I saw something sitting on the back of Sit looking at me. It's a woman, and wearing white clothes and red eyes. I was so scared, so I drive too fast, and my car engines start making a lot of noise, and so fast. There's a speed bump, but I didn't stop. My car started to slam its front bumper on the road when I drive too fast in the speed bump because I was so scared. Until I reached the guardhouse office. I told the guards what happened, and they told me there was really a ghost on that street because one time there's a tricycle was passing that street, and woman asked if she could get a ride, so the tricycle driver let her ride, and she told the driver to drive her to the hospital. When they arrived at the hospital, the tricycle driver was so shocked because the woman she picked up was not inside the tricycle. And my friend told me there's a story on that street several years ago that a girl was murdered and raped on that street because it was a lot of dark and tall bushes. So when I'm driving alone, I always ask someone to come with me during night. And I don't want to drive alone at night anymore because I don't want to see again someone's ghost riding again with me. I hope her soul rest in peace.
I was a big Tinder guy a few years ago. Everywhere I went, I would update my location and then update, my body count. Then I quit doing Tinder and stuck with Instagram. I know, they're completely different, and IG has a bunch of fake accounts. So I saw this girl commenting on all of my friends' pictures. Then she commented on mine. I also saw my friends replying, so I figured she was a real person because I looked on her page and she had way more followers than people she was following. So I DM'd her. I definitely thought she wasn't going to reply, but she did within an hour. We talked for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and we made it official. She was pretty, had a degree, and a good job, as she said. I felt she was out of my league and too perfect. Every day she posted new photos, and I told my friends about her and they seemed pretty jealous, except for my friend Ryan. He said I was stupid because I never spoke with her, and I only messaged her. She invited me over because she said she can cook. Ryan told me to don't go. The rest of my friends said don't have any kids, and they would laugh. So I went over there, but not without Ryan calling me a clown first. The GPS said she lived about an hour away. When I first started to talk to her, she told me that she lived in a nice neighborhood. But when I got there were people everywhere and the neighborhood was not that nice. When I stopped at the stop sign at the corner, people walked up to my windows and asked me what do I need. But I pulled off really fast and got to the house. It was a duplex, so I messaged her. And she said to come up the stairs. It was about 9 at night, and people were everywhere just standing around. I knocked on the door, and I was definitely excited. The door opened, and to my surprise, it was a bald-headed white guy with a patchy beard, tattoos everywhere, including his head, with a tank top on. I asked, was Lisa home, and he said, yeah, come in. When I walked in, I was immediately hit with a musty smell mixed with cheese. He told me to sit down, and he sat down across from me on the couch. He said she'll be out soon. He asked me did I want something to drink, and I said, yeah, sure. When I got up, I texted her, can she come out, please? She immediately said yes. The man came back in with 2 cups of juice, one for him and one for myself. Then I noticed that he put a phone down on the table next to him. So I acted like I sneezed and got some on my arm. Then I asked for a tissue. He went to get some tissue and he left his phone like I thought he would. I texted her back, and to my horror, the phone rang. I answered. He said, "Hello? What's up?" I said, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I was just trying to be nice." I looked on the caller ID and it was my name. I heard him coming back. He came back and we sat there for about a minute. And then the phone rang again because he never checked the message that I sent. He looked at the phone. I looked at the phone. Then we looked at each other. I postured up, and he calmly said, "I guess you caught me." Then out of nowhere, he lunged toward me, attempting to grab me. I punched him, and he fell on his face. I ran out of there so fast, and I never looked back. Yeah, I called the cops. And when they got there, the man was still knocked out. After that, I never went on dates with people that I met online again.
Hey movie lovers, did you know you can watch TV on your phone? Discover over 100 TV channels.
It was around 5:30 p.m. I was walking in the street to my dormitory since my home is far away from my school. There were only 3 to 5 people passing by that street at that time. While walking, I was texting my boyfriend, asking him if I could come over that night since I have a project to make and my laptop's being an ass. It won't turn on, so I was hoping I could borrow his laptop. And then, when I looked up, there was an old man walking towards me. The street was narrow, so I stopped and moved away to the side to make room for him when he did the same. I nervously laughed and moved to the other side, and he copied me again. This time I felt a bit nervous. Excuse me, I muttered. I tried to get away from him, but he kept blocking my direction. Then he laughed and moved away. I felt relieved. I quickly walked past him, and then he stomped his feet behind me. I got startled, and then he laughed. I thought he was just a crazy old man. I told my boyfriend about it, and he asked me if I was okay, so I told him not to worry. Around 7 p.m., I was at the jeepney stop, waiting for a jeepney to arrive, because I was going to my boyfriend's apartment, since it was 45 minutes and 2 rides away. 30 or 45 minutes later, there was one jeepney with only 5 passengers. So I hopped in. One by one, the passengers got off the jeepney until I was the only one left. "Drop me off by the terminal, please," I said. He didn't say a word, just kept on driving. When we finally got into the terminal, he didn't stop. Just drop me off here, please," I told him again. Then I saw his face in the rearview mirror. It was the crazy man from earlier. I panicked. He was looking at me, smiling. I immediately called my boyfriend, since we don't have 911 here. He wasn't picking up. I didn't know what to do. Should I jump off the Jeep? Then suddenly a group of friends halted the Jeep and he stopped. I immediately got off and ran. I might have looked like a maniac to those teenagers, but I didn't care. I called my boyfriend again. Picked up. He had just got off from school and I told him everything. He picked me up where I was, and since then he never let me travel at night.
When I was 18, I only just recently got out of a relationship with a significant other, and I wanted to see other people. I took up online dating on this app that I don't want to name. I never told my parents about my previous relationship, or the guys that I talked to online, so they know nothing about this story. But I still need to tell them one day. Anyway, within a short period of time, I received lots of messages from guys. Most of them were perverts, or just didn't catch my attention, until a cute guy messaged me. I forgot his name, so we'll just call him Justin. Justin was around 23 years old at the time. When he messaged me, he told me how attractive I was and showered me with affection and romantic text messages. I was naive at the time, so I was awed and blushed when he told me all that. We started to get to know each other, He was living in Canada, and I was a Polish girl living in the United States. We had a few hobbies in common, and we both went to college. I was studying to be a police officer to get an associate's degree, and he was going to university to get a bachelor's degree. Then, eventually, his messages started to make me uncomfortable. He said that he preferred white girls over Asian girls, and that he always wanted to have sex with a white girl. He asked me if I was still a virgin, and even though I felt uncomfortable, I said yes. He started talking to me sexually, and I didn't like it, but I complied. Then he asked me if I could
She
visit
said,
him
right.
sometime in Canada,
But I can find
even
the
though I just
filter.
met him a couple days ago.
She
Living
sound
with my
happy
parents
about
in a
it.
strict Polish household, I told him that I couldn't because of that. He then argued that I was an adult and I could make my own decisions, which was true, but as a Polish person, you still have to listen to your parents even though you're an adult. Of course, I did tell him that I lived in the United States, but I didn't tell him exactly where I live. He then asked me if I lived in XYZ town in XYZ state. I was shocked when he asked this because I never told him exactly where I lived, and on my profile, I did not give out my location, so I have no idea how he found out about that. I lied to him and said that I didn't, but he said I was lying, and I confessed. Then he asked me for my address, but I refused to give it to him. He got angry and said that everyone gave their address out, which of course I knew wasn't true. I then blocked him, but the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, I heard that in my neighborhood, there was a break-in. 2 men broke into a house, but they didn't steal anything. Instead, they might have been looking for someone. My heart jumped when I heard this. Justin was looking for me. A couple houses later, and they gave up. I waited a while later, and I have not heard about anything like this again. I dread to think what might have happened if Justin found the right house in my neighborhood and kidnapped me.
The payment's due, Chen.
Please, I can't keep doing this.
Now.
Last one, y'all, alright?
I was 16 when this happened to me, and it still haunts me to this day. My older brother's friend gave me work of house sitting his rather large house for 2 days, with the pay rate being $100 a night. For the sake of privacy reasons, let's call my brother's friend Nick. $200 was a lot for such a simple task as house sitting, and since I recently sold my PlayStation 3 to save up for a PlayStation 4, the job came as godsend. At around 6 p.m., Nick picked me up and drove me to his house, as it was getting dark out. Once we got there, he told me about the security cameras he had installed in and out of his home. But I didn't have any intentions of staring at any security monitor all night, as I had brought my laptop to pass the time. After some time had passed, I felt hungry and decided to grab something from the fridge. But as I got up to make my way down, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye from the monitor. I sat back down, closing my laptop, and taking a closer look, noticing the movement coming from camera 4. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that it was a silhouette of what appeared to be a man standing outside the house. Within seconds of glancing away from the monitor, the man was gone. At that very moment, I heard glass shatter somewhere downstairs, causing me to immediately look at the cameras, noticing him crawling in through the basement window at an alarming rate. I started to panic, watching him climb the basement stairs with a knife clenched in his hand. I quickly locked the door to my room and dialed 911, explaining everything. I watched the monitor, terrified to see the man on the same floor as mine, desperately opening and closing the doors, looking
Yeah.
for
You still want to go outside?
No.
Are you? Oh my gosh.
anyone to cross his path.
You asked mama already?
Against the door.
She been said we can go outside, but you want to be in here for a whole hour? Asked her when I came in, she been said yeah.
straining to hear his now slowed footsteps approach my door as he attempted to open it. Realizing I was in there, he began to shout and pound on the door aggressively, frightening me to the very core. As I sat there shaking, I heard sirens in the distance, steadily getting louder and louder. My fear quickly disappeared as I heard the man run towards the stairs, attempting to escape his fate. When I heard the front door slam open, accompanied by somebody yelling, "Police! Put your hands in the air!" Moments later, I walked downstairs and saw the intruder in a pair of handcuffs being escorted to the police cruiser. I thanked one of the officers and called Nick, explaining everything to him. After about 20 minutes, he picked me up and took me home. But I got no sleep that night. All I could think of was how lucky I was to be alive. And if the cops hadn't shown up when they did, I wouldn't be here to tell this story.
Alright, I can't stop watching this and I can't end this video because
I've been followed by creeps before, and in one case was almost assaulted. I was never truly scared about that type of stuff. I've been through a lot in my life, and I consider myself to be pretty strong. Even when some creep attempted to assault me, I wasn't scared because I knew I was gonna beat his ass, and I did. I never feel threatened unless I get my gut feeling. I know when something bad's gonna happen, or if someone is a shady character, etc. My friends tell me I have some type of sixth sense. I'm not one for superstition, but I also have to agree it gets really weird, and I'm almost always right. One day, I got the worst gut feeling I ever had in my life. I was in my first year of college, living in some very nice apartments. I loved living there. It was a Friday, and I needed to head to the bank before it closed because I forgot to cash in my check beforehand. I left my house, locked the door, and started heading towards my car. Right as I left the hallway of my apartment complex and started walking, a beat-up rusty truck pulled up as if on cue. There were two guys inside. One was a pretty big guy with tattoos and looked like he just got out of prison, and the other one was super skinny with glasses. The second I laid my eyes on them, I had my gut feeling kick in. It was worse than usual, and I immediately felt like shit. The big guy was driving and started to tell me things like, "You are so beautiful, come over here, let's talk. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." I didn't want to walk to my car because I didn't want them to know what car I drive. And I didn't want to walk back to my house because I lived on the first floor, which is easier to break into. And if they didn't know already where I lived, I wanted to keep them from finding out. So I started walking to the front office of the apartment complex, which was a little far away. I already had my pocket knife out, but hidden in my sweater sleeve. They kept calling out, trailing me as I walked to the office. I kept my eye on them so I knew what they were up to. They eventually asked me to go to a party with them. The big guy said, "We're having a party at 2 a.m. at a friend's house who lives here. Wanna come? We can all hang out beforehand and get to know each other before we go." It was around 3:30 p.m. at the time, just for your information. I ignored them and told them, "No, stop bothering me." They kept trying to persuade me by saying nice things and stuff, and eventually they both said, "If you come with us, we'll give you a free pair of shoes." The skinny guy then leans back and starts digging around the back seat. I stopped to look because I wanted to make sure he wasn't gonna grab a gun or duct tape or some shit like that. I was a good few feet away from the truck and took a running position just in case. He pulls out a dark blue suitcase from the back seat and opens it. Inside there are maybe 100 different pairs of shoes. The sizing ranged from a small pink Dora the Explorer shoe to an adult-sized woman's stilettos. That's the moment where my gut feeling went into a frenzy. My knees became so weak I threw up on the spot. I've never felt so sick and felt so disgusted in my entire life. I felt pure evil. I screamed no, and they became extremely angry and began to get out of the car. I booked it. In the street, my neighbor's little kids were playing outside. I snatched them up and ran all the way to the front office. No way I was gonna leave these little kids behind with some fucking freaks. The minute we got there, I told the front office, and they called the cops, and I called the kid's mother. I told them that her kids were with me and not to leave the house in case they were still out there. I didn't want them to find out where she lived either. After that, for the next few days, I was terrified to leave my house. So terrified I had my friend come and stay with me for about a week. On the 4th day, we were getting ready to leave to go get food. And while I was locking the door, my friend said, "That's a shitty-looking truck." I turned around, and it was those guys in the truck right in front of my house. We ran back inside. Apparently they had been stalking out my place for a while. They were never caught, and I never saw them again after the apartments cracked down on security. I learned about serial killers in school and found out some take trophies of their victims. I always thought back and wondered, what if all those shoes were trophies? Needless to say, I no longer live there.
When I was 17, I didn't have a driver's license. Most of the time I walked or hitchhike. There was this one night. There weren't that many cars on the road, and it was very cold. And this man pulled over. When the guy pulled over, I took a good look at the guy and figured I could take him if he tried anything. He was on the slender side and had a strange frailness about him, even though he looked healthy enough. I got into the car after we agreed on the destination. We exchanged names and I warmed my fingers up in front of the heating room. He spoke quietly, asking a few questions along the lines of, was I local and how did I like living there? He said he only been here for a few months, but found it beautiful and hoped he could find happiness there. That comment struck me as a little odd, but I brushed it off. It began to snow and the road quickly got slippery. So he slowed and he kept his eyes straight out the windshield, driving silently. I was okay with that, as small talk was never my forte. About 10 minutes later, I noticed a car near the intersection we were approaching seemed to be sliding, so I said, "Watch out." He immediately hit the gas, shooting through the intersection and burst out with, "Don't ever scream at me." Needless to say, I was taken aback. I said, "Look, this is close enough. Just pull over here and I can get there." He didn't seem to hear me. So I said, "Richard, did you hear me?" I said, "You can pull over here and let me out." But no response. He just stared straight ahead, driving faster now than he did when it started snowing. To say I was scared doesn't seem to cover the depth of the fear that began to rise in me. I didn't know if I should stay quiet or speak, but I was damn sure not going to yell after his outburst. After about a mile, he began to mumble under his breath. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying, but I assumed he was speaking to me. So I said, "What did you say? I couldn't hear you." He began to speak quietly and rapidly, saying things like, "I've told you time and time again, do not yell at me. I don't appreciate it. No, you don't listen. You don't listen." And I was just sitting there looking at him. I was at a complete loss. I didn't know what to say in response or if I should say anything at all. I contemplated just jumping out of the car, but nixed that idea when I realized the door lock was missing. There was just a silver-lined hole where it should have been. I started to cry and debate with myself about causing an accident by grabbing the wheel and hoping for the best, when he suddenly looked at me for the first time since I had gotten in the car. He blinked several times, rapidly, then slowed the car, pulling into a gas station. I waited to see if he unlocked the doors, not wanting to say anything to set him off again. After a minute or two, he quietly said, "I think I better let you out of here." And he hit the button to the door locks, and he opened the door. I wasn't about to hesitate, so I jumped out of the car as if I were on fire. I about to turn and walk into the gas station when he called my name. He looked so damn sad and I hesitated. He apologized, said he was sorry if he had frightened me, that he never would have harmed me. And he asked if I'd be able to get home okay. I said I would and closed the door. He began to pull out of the gas station, but stopped suddenly. He just sat there for a couple of moments, his head down. I froze, wondering what the hell was up, and was about to run into the gas station, but he opened his window and yelled at me, waving something in his hand, my hat. I left it on his seat. I slowly approached the side of his car, and he handed it to me, apologizing again. I didn't know what else to say, so I just said, thanks. I watched as he drove off, making sure he was out of sight before moving on so he wouldn't know which direction I was heading. As I walked, I went to put my hat back on, and a piece of paper fell out of it. Folded into a paper was a $100 bill. The paper said, "I'm sorry. Please take a cab and don't hitchhike anymore tonight." I didn't. In fact, it was the last time I ever hitchhiked in my life. Will never, ever do that again.
Alright, squad. Alright, gang. This is the end of my video. Like and subscribe if y'all like the video. And peace. And see y'all, like, I don't even know. But peace.